Tissues, the living fabric. What is this? Well, pretty much it's all the different tissues, all the different cells that make up these tissues, that make up the parts of your body. So as we go through this chapter, we'll be looking at the different types of tissues that are found throughout the body. Now, to understand tissues, we're looking at the term histology. Histology basically is the study of the tissues. So what's happening here now is, as we go through this histology chapter, we'll be looking at the four main categories of tissues, and then various different tissues that fall within those categories. You can see here that tissues are defined as groups of cells that have similarities and work together. You'll notice that as we break down the different types of tissues, we'll see how they have all very similar shapes of cells or similar functionality, but we'll look at what the commonalities are across each tissue, plus what makes each individual tissue unique, how to identify it, where to find it, and what the functions are. But to start with, the four main tissue types. When you start looking at these, you'll see the first one, the nervous tissue. Well, nervous tissue, think about brain, spinal cord, your different nerves. But if you're asking where is nervous tissue, a location, you can't just say the body. It's too general because that's everything. Try to be more precise, the brain or the spinal column or inside nerves. Next one up we have is epithelial tissue. In the case of epithelial tissue, it traditionally is covering or lining for the vast majority. Things like your skin is going to be epithelial tissue. The lining of the inside of your GI tract, inside of your respiratory tract, those are going to be epithelial tissues as well. Next up is the muscular tissue. You can see we have three different things listed there. We have skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle tissue. Well, each one's unique and has their own function and locations, but they all fall in the same category. You'll find cardiac in the heart. You'll find skeletal muscle in muscles attached to bones, things like the deltoid or the biceps brachii. Smooth muscle is typically around hollow organs, so around your GI tract, around your arteries. And the last one here is your connective tissue. Connective tissue, well, that's going to be pretty much everything holding things together. From the solid bones, so you have your osseous tissue, to the different cartilages, to things that aren't quite as solid like adipose tissue or your tendons and ligaments, to the liquid, which is blood. So all four of these categories we have to go through to get more information about them, find out what the tissues are, and how to identify them. But before we can even get into those four main categories, into any more detail, we have to understand where they come from. So that's the idea of developmental aspects. Now, all of the tissues are going to develop from embryonic tissue. So you can see here we talk about primary germ layers. You have the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. Three primary layers that start off as the embryonic tissues. And it's these three that are formed in embryonic, so in utero, before you're born, which means that pretty much all your tissues have already started to grow before you even are born. Doesn't mean they don't continue. Sure, you have tons of growth after you're born, but the basis for each one of these tissues has already started at this point. So inside of each of these three different embryonic tissue layers, so the ectoderm, the mesoderm, the endoderm, we'll have the four primary types of tissues originating. In the case of the nervous tissue is originating in the ectoderm layer. Well, if you go to the mesoderm layer, you're going to have your muscular tissue as well as your connective tissue. Now, if you notice, I don't have listed out here the endoderm because the endoderm doesn't have anything that's only unique to it by itself. The endoderm is going to contain and start with the epithelial tissue. But you'll notice the epithelial tissue starts in all three of these layers. So you're going to have some starting in every one of the embryonic layers. So looking here, we can see in the ectoderm, you have things that are going to be from the epithelial tissue as well as the nervous tissue. Epithelial tissue, you see the skin cells, for example. That's covering the skin. That's the epidermis, that's epithelial tissue. But then you also have the nervous tissue in that layer. When you get into the mesoderm, you're going to end up with some connective tissue. That's the blood cells there. That's some connective. You then end up with some epithelial tissue. That's the tubules in the kidneys. They're lining the inside of the kidney tubules. And then the rest you can see is going to be the muscular tissue. So again, connective and muscular are part of the mesoderm. But you also have the epithelial tissue. And then we get down to the endoderm. That's going to be primarily only the epithelial tissue. Because the examples here, you have the thyroid cell, you have the lung cells. Those are all epithelial based. They're lining the inside of those different locations, lungs and thyroid. So we're looking at the three different embryonic layers and the four tissues that are arising from those embryonic layers. But how do we start to interpret all this? How do you recognize things? Now, if you notice, there's a picture of an egg here, hard-boiled egg. I'm sure everyone's seen what an egg looks like. It's kind of an oval shape. You have the yolk, so it has different parts. If you cut right down the center of the egg, so right down the center, you end up with the typical view of what an egg would look like. You could recognize that as an egg. But now, if you cut down just the edge here, would you be able to tell me that that white oval was an egg for sure, definitively? Well, if you saw the cut, sure. But if you were given this white oval look at, you couldn't touch it, couldn't tell anything about it. All I could do is look at it. Well, maybe you might guess egg, maybe you might guess other things. It's all based on how the cuts are made. Take a look at this elbow noodle. If you cut right at the top of this red dash here, you get two circles. Would you know those two circles were an elbow noodle? Not necessarily. But move down to that green one, the middle there. This one, you might be able to get a good idea that is an elbow noodle. So you probably have a good guess there. But get down to the bottom one, it's an oval. Again, you wouldn't know for sure. The idea is every single histology slide you look at, every cut, is just a little bit different because each one is a slice of a tissue. And as you move through a tissue or a gland, it changes a little bit every single slice. So it's important to understand the main or key features. But also keep in mind there are going to be outliers, ones that are right towards the very edge of that tissue, which might not be your typical view. So as we're going through the different histology slides, look at the different types of tissues. We want to make sure to keep in mind, is it the perfect typical view, or is it maybe a little bit off? Now, the ones I'll be presenting, I'll try to keep them as typical, as normal as possible. But you want to keep in mind that there is going to be variation. So the ones you see in the lectures might be different ones you see in the labs. Understand the variation of the different tissues. So looking at tissues, interpreting them, that's where we're stopping at for this video. Future videos will get into the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the muscular tissue, and the nervous tissue. How to identify the different types and what they are for the naming systems. So a little bit to look forward to.